So how's the new room coming? Well, you know how people like to share those stories like social media versus reality? This is mine. They say you get what you pay for. Well, that's the phrase that's been swirling around in my head for the better part of 2 weeks, while I have done everything in my power to keep my sanity while building out the feature wall in our new living room. But before I get into all the drama, let me first walk you through the design. And I've been working on the design of this wall for months, going all the way back to when we still lived in Austin. It's been inspired by faux fireplace walls that I keep seeing on social media, and I envisioned a design that, kind of like those walls, would allow us to review both TVs and projectors without me always having to swap one out for the other, which, I'm not gonna lie, doing that gets old fast. But the real problem with simply just mounting a TV to the wall is that despite TVs being flat, they don't sit flush. So if you want to employ a dual setup, one that has both a TV and a projection screen, there just really aren't a lot of options. And initially we thought about doing a drop-down screen, and we may still do that someday, but we are bleeding money right now. And in an attempt to save the patient, i.e. our bank account, we've decided to go a little bit different direction. Here's why. A drop-down screen in our room would require a custom screen and a custom installation because we have a sloped ceiling and the amount of drop needed for the screen to be at the proper viewing height is not standard and would have run us upwards of about $4,000 to $7,000 just for the screen. Now, we could go with one of these new floor rising screens. However, that would require me to have the case visible in the room, which I don't want to do. Or I will have to build a box to house the case and potentially even raise it up off the floor so that it could ascend to the proper viewing height. Oh, and those floor rising screens, they aren't exactly cheap either. Which brings me to our faux wall. Now, by building a bump out in order to make our TV appear recessed, we now have the necessary space on the front wall to mount a projection screen in front of the TV. And when we do that, everything's still going to look completely normal. So how are we doing this? Well, the Kanto wall mount that we use will support TVs up to 100 inches diagonally and at weights up to 200 pounds. It is a fully articulating mount, so any TV we mount to it is able to be pushed back into an opening without a problem. That said, even when fully pushed back, our Sony TV has a mounted depth of nearly 6 inches. Actually, once you start adding cables and such, the depth is closer to 7 to 7.5 inches. So this is now the depth of the bump out that I will build around the TV. Now, the design of this wall is actually pretty simple, and you can frame one out yourself using standard 2x4s available at just about any hardware store. Now, I intended to build it out in the simplest and cheapest way possible because I knew that the wall didn't have to be load-bearing. I mean, the TV wasn't actually mounted to it. I was simply going to build 2 long columns and connect them using some horizontal supports. That was my plan anyway. Because moving has just taken up so much of our time, I went ahead and I made the call to hire a local handyman to carry out the build, and I thought I was being smart going this route. I was wrong. Despite this person having built similar feature walls in the area, as well as having very detailed drawings and measurements from me, he proceeded to build the structure in his own way. Long story short, we parted ways and it was awkward, and I was left with kind of a half-ish finished wall, and now I was even further behind schedule. So in sheer desperation, we reached out to a neighbor to ask if they knew of anyone who did framing and drywall, because at this point, what I had on my wall was in such disarray that I didn't even know if it could be salvaged. Thankfully, a skilled crew was available to step in and, well, rebuild just about everything. Seriously, as the 3 of us stood there and went over the project, I felt like Ed Harris in the film Apollo 13, looking over the wreckage of what the previous guy had done.
We'll review our status here, Si. Let's look at this thing from a standpoint of status. What have we got on the spacecraft that's good?
After going over what needed fixing and what still needed to be done, they got to work and promptly erected a plastic barrier, completely shutting me out. While I appreciated the care, staring at the plastic tent in my living room for nearly a week didn't fill me with a great deal of excitement, let alone really exciting content for you guys. But after 2 days of construction and drywall and a whole weekend waiting for the mud and texture to dry, the wall was finished. Or so I thought. Now initially, the direction was to have the bump out match the rest of the walls in the home. This meant applying a knockdown texture that I would then paint. But the morning that I was geared up to paint, Kristi took one look at the wall and said, "I think it needs to be smooth." Throughout this process, the one thing I've kept saying to myself is, never again will I not trust myself enough to do the task that I know how to do. And while I know how to hang and mud drywall, I've never removed texture from the stuff. A few quick tutorial videos and a lot of spackling and sanding on my part, we finally arrived at a perfectly smooth wall. Now, one of the looks Kristi and I like is a technique known as lime washing. And while some of you may look at this and think it's just a faux finish, it's actually quite different in that it requires a special type of primer, not to mention paint, to create a truly organic plaster-like effect on surfaces like drywall. There's only a handful of companies who make this type of paint product, and it's just not something that you can go down to your local hardware store and get. We went with the company Color Atelier and ordered everything we needed to lime wash the bump out from their website and paid through the nose to have all of it overnighted in order to avoid further delays. Remember, this project was originally supposed to take 3 days. By this point in our story, we're approaching week 3. Thankfully, the process of lime washing your wall, it's not difficult. Actually, it's pretty fun. Here's the deal. If you want a more noticeable, dramatic effect with this type of paint, you're going to want to go a little darker than I think you may have originally thought you needed. This paint dries pretty light, but we knew we wanted a super subtle texture, one that kind of revealed itself throughout the changing light of the day. So we went light. We went with the color bone along with old white for a more layered effect. But the old white actually turned out to be too light, so we just stuck with bone for the entire process. But I have to stress this, if drama is what you're after, try going for a shade or two darker than what you're originally planning. And do paint a swatch before making your final decision. Oh, one more note. You have to stir the living piss out of this paint. Rest in peace, little KitchenAid hand mixer. You're all we had. With everything finally framed, drywall, smoothed out, and now painted, it was time to mount the TV. I have never been more nervous when mounting a TV than I was putting our Sony back on the mount and sliding it back into its new home. Thankfully, the TV fit, and it fit damn near perfectly. You want to see it? I know you guys, I can already hear 2 big questions. Number 1, what happens if we get a different TV? And number 2, how much did it cost? After taking the measurements of a lot of different TVs, between about 75 and 85 inches diagonally, I arrived at the hole that you see here, which should work for most TVs around these sizes. But since our mount is flexible, we can mount an even larger TV by pulling the mount away from the wall, allowing a larger TV to sit flush against the bump out, covering the opening for a more traditional look. As for cost, well, there is what the project should cost, and then there is what it ultimately did cost. My original budget was based on me doing all of the work, and had I just done that from the beginning, I would have been able to come in around $1,500. Actually, had I hired the more pro team to do the work, skipping over the original guy, it would have cost me about the same. But because I'm an impatient dum-dum, after everything was said and done to get the wall to this exact point, we spent just under $3,200. Yeah, we did that. I wish I could say that we could stop there, but there's still more to do because the bump out, this is just phase 1. Phase 2 is a whole other animal that we're going to be tackling in an upcoming video because now we have to address the acoustics in this room. That is the story of what I thought would be a simple build that turned into a nearly 3-week ordeal. All right, it was a nightmare. But I have to say, now that it's finished, I'm so happy with the way that it looks. And I am excited to be just one step closer to this room's full reveal. But I wonder if Kristi has anything to add before we sign off.
I am so proud of you. I think you did an amazing job.
Aw, thank you.
And I know that despite our being together, like 5 years at this point, I haven't really seen Andrew the handyman yet until now. Frankly, okay, look, to be honest, he has hired out everything, like back when we lived in Austin, you know, like from lawn mowing to simple tasks.
Yeah.
You've kind of like, you've delegated.
Yeah.
And I totally get it, but I'm not going to lie. In the back of my mind, all the times you've told me about all these things you've built in the past, I was like, sure, Jan. insert clip here.
Yeah.
But you really surprised me, and I think you did such a good job. I think the wall looks amazing. Yes, the LIMEWASH looks a little bit like paint, but that's probably maybe our technique and application and the choice of paint colors.
It's more the choice of paint color, I think.
But
yeah.
I still think it looks really pretty.
Oh, it's a super kind of very subtle, leathery finish, and it's never going to come through on camera, and that's what I'm afraid of. It's like it's never going to fully come through for you guys, and so it's just one of those things where you're going to have to kind of take our word for it.
Yeah.
It's like it's stunning, but it's subtle.
It's subtle AF.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it is.
I think if we had chosen maybe the bone plus one of the other like colors in the same shade of family, but maybe on the darker side, and started there, because I think with the application process they advise you to start with the darker color
and then
use if you're doing a lighter technique, or using two different colors. You want to start with the darker shade, then put your lighter shade on top. But you guys, we were in major time crunch. Like Andrew was saying, this whole project has just been, like waiting for Christmas to come when you're a child.
Yeah.
It took forever.
Absolutely.
But I think it looks really pretty. The TV looks fantastic in the little recess.
I have to say, I was not prepared for the, call it subjective, but perceivable increases in supposed quality. The TV looks more contrasty kind of back because the bump out really does shield it from side reflections from the windows, because it's actually just a little bit back. And then at night, the bump out creates this like black hole around it. And so the image really does appear to just sort of float. So while I wouldn't call this project a beginner build, can you build it simply? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can pause on the screen when I show you my original design and totally just modify that to fit your needs. But if you have the patience and you can be pretty exacting with your measurements, this is a great way to kind of elevate the, I'll call it the presence of any TV. You don't even have to have an 85. You can do this with like a 65 inch in, say, your bedroom or something. But it's just a fantastic way to sort of just elevate the presence of a television. Oh
yeah, it definitely feels more expensive. It to me, I think it looks purposeful.
Yeah.
It kind of gives off like a projection vibe, like
a little bit,
like just more so maybe as the day turns more into evening, because it gives you a sort of a shadow frame around the edge. But I think this is going to make it way easier, and I'm really excited to be able to do the projection screen right over it.
Yeah.
Because like you said, what a just huge pain in the rear.
Yeah.
Every single time, because you're talking about creating holes and having to take the mount off, the TV mount that is, off the wall in order to accommodate a screen, which it's so time consuming. And that is part of the reason why we haven't reviewed a ton of projectors.
Yeah.
So hopefully this opens up more opportunity for us to bring that side of home theater to you, the audience.
Oh, absolutely. I hope so, because we haven't been like purposely not doing it. We did that one. We did the LG Cinebeam, I think it was last year. And that was a great experience, very eye-opening one. And we've been meaning to do more. It's just, we also are one of the few channels that we get these larger TVs. And you guys really, really like those types of videos. And so we haven't backed off showing you a larger experience. But when you get these larger TVs, they're just so much harder to move with two people or by yourself sometimes, that it just becomes kind of a time physical capability sort of equation as to, can we really do another projector review right now? But this should allow us to kind of rapid fire. So I'm very, very hopeful that there aren't any more delays with respect to projector reviews. In fact, we have one that just came in, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this space, this house. I love this house so much.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for everybody to see ultimately what it's all going to look like and sound like. Anyway, we're getting closer.
We're getting closer.
And we appreciate everybody's patience.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is our story time. Thank you for coming on the journey with us as we unpacked this odyssey that is the wall. That's just what we're calling it. We're calling it the wall. Anyway, what do you guys think? You know, what do you guys think? Tell us, now that you've seen it, worth it? Crazy? Inspired? I want to know. Let me know.
Nice comments only,
Nice
guys.
comments only, please. I'm very fragile. Anyway, if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And go ahead and ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links that Kristi left for you down below, know that that is a great way that you have continued to show your support for this channel and the work that we do here. And we cannot thank you guys enough. Follow me on Instagram. You're definitely going to want to do that if you're at all into some of these home projects, because I leave teasers like breadcrumbs on Instagram almost daily. So follow me on Instagram, Recovering Audiophile, and that is it for us today. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching and for bearing with us. And we're going to see you on the next video. Bye.